Fighting Blindness Canada's Young Leaders program is a career-oriented initiative that provides young people living with vision loss in Canada with the tools they need to develop their skills and pursue rewarding careers. The session you're about to watch is a recording. To learn more about the Young Leaders program, please visit the link in the video description below. The Young Leaders program is proudly supported by RBC Future Launch, Rhythm Pharmaceuticals, and the J.P. Bickell Foundation. We hope that you enjoy the session and share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. So for tonight, I'm going to pass the mic over to Jacqueline, who's one of our amazing co-chairs this year. Jacqueline's going to spend about 20 or 30 minutes chatting with our special guest, Brogan Freeborn, who works in accessibility and is one of our fantastic mentors this year. And then we'll open up the floor to discussion and questions. I just ask that everyone sort of keep themselves on mute until we get to the Q&A. And our meeting tonight is being recorded for those who can't make it. So just a big thank you in advance to Brogan for being here and Jacqueline for moderating. I'm really looking forward to listening, and I will pass it over now to the two of you. And thanks again.
Hi everyone, my name is Jacqueline. I am 27 from Vancouver, BC. Thank you, Brogan, for joining us today. She's experienced professional with a diverse background in healthcare and social services as the manager of services and operations at Vision Loss Rehabilitation Canada. Brogan, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? What's your eye condition? And what's your current role?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess first, I just wanted to say thank you for having me. I feel very honored to be able to sit and chat with each of you. So my name is Brogan Freeborn. I am a woman in my 30s, a white woman in my 30s. My hair is blonde in color, and I have dark frame glasses. My pronouns are she, her. So my current role right now is with Vision Loss Rehabilitation Canada, formerly known as CNIV. And my role there is manager of services and operations. And I know we get a little bit more into that a bit later. My eye condition, I was born with an eye condition called congenital nystagmus. For those that don't know what that eye condition is, it's an eye condition where my eyes involuntary move back and forth, no matter how much I want to stop it. As far as maybe difficulties or barriers that I face as a result of my vision, I would say eye fatigue is something that is fairly common with me. Access to reliable and convenient transportation, and then of course accessibility. So yeah.
Thank you. How did you discover that you had vision loss?
So I discovered I had vision loss through my parents. So because I was born with it, it's not something I didn't lose my vision later on in life. I would say that the time in which I wanted to learn a little bit more about my eye disease is probably in my 20s. That's kind of where I really started to kind of research more into treatment options, career paths and different things like that.
When you were first diagnosed, where did you go? Where did you get your information, and how easy was it to get information to help navigate the healthcare system?
Yeah, absolutely. So while my vision loss was known from birth, like I had said before, I kind of started exploring a little bit more about my diagnosis in my 20s. And during that time, I received a lot of valuable information and support. And the people that had kind of supported me through that journey were my doctor, my ophthalmologist at the time, and then CNIB and Vision Loss Rehab Canada. Having access to this network was really it was really beneficial to me as I kind of worked through some challenges going through college and interviewing, things like that. I would say other sources of support that I've accessed, there's lots of Facebook support groups, there's a nystagmus one that I'm part of. there are some, actually there's quite a few programs that the CNIB Foundation also hosts as well. Particularly like an adjustment to vision loss group, which I found has been helpful for myself, but also for other individuals living with sight loss. And then of course, information from FBC, the Young Leaders Program, and kind of areas like that. It really is a well-rounded, in terms of how I got my information and how I navigated that. I would say it didn't come from one central location, but it really did. It was almost like a team of people that had kind of supported me through that.
Can you tell us what's a typical day in the life of like, you know, what do you do as a manager of services and operations?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my role at Vision Loss Rehab Canada, I lead a team of around 25 staff spread across 5 regions in southwestern Ontario. So as part of that role, I'm a member of the provincial management team and primarily responsible for like the day-to-day leadership of the region, ensuring people with sight loss have timely access to care and services. Some of the things that like I do on a daily basis would include evaluating like our service quality, meeting with and supporting our teams and staff, assisting with like building operations, coordinating services, and more. Some of the, alongside my role, I held a portfolio for our Client and Family Advisory Council. So it's a group that we had just launched this year that I'm really proud of, and it allows for our clients and their caregivers to kind of get together and discuss our services, provide feedback, and so on. Part of my role also kind of involves working with stakeholders such as our funders. So, working with Ontario Health and local community partners and practitioners just to ensure that our services are inclusive, but also aligned with the healthcare system. And one of like the biggest things that I try to do within my role is look at bringing vision rehabilitation into the healthcare continuum. And because I sincerely believe that integration really is key when it comes to vision rehabilitation. So for instance, one of the things that I've been working on over the last couple months is just working with our local hospitals to integrate a little bit more into, like, they have stroke units where, our clients are may or may not be experiencing some sight loss. So kind of looking at how to integrate our services and provide timely and equitable services to our clients and people with sight loss.
It's great to hear more about what you do in the day and everything. How did you first get interested in your career?
Mm-hmm. So my interest with the field of vision rehab really started about 15 years ago, and my interest in this career was sparked during a placement I had with the CNIB at the time in Hamilton. Having that placement really allowed for me, number one, to get some hands-on learning experience, but I also was able to learn a lot more about the services that the specialists there had provided and the impact that that had on people with sight loss. And from there, I kind of knew that this is what I wanted to pursue as a career. So I had gone to school to become a certified vision rehabilitation therapist. But over the years, I've held various different roles, primarily with CNIB and vision loss rehab. I've worked as program lead for children and youth programs. I've worked as a vision rehab therapist. I've also spent some time at CNIB Lake Joe, their camp for the blind in the Muskoka. So while I primarily have focused in on the vision rehab portion, I've had, I would say, a fairly well-rounded experience in terms of my career, which has provided me with quite a few opportunities for learning and things like that.
How did you disclose your vision to your employer, and what was the overall process following?
Yeah, So because I worked for Vision Loss Rehabilitation Canada and CNIB at the time, my vision loss was known, but it was still something that I disclosed in my interview. So when I had interviewed for the role of vision rehab therapist, I openly discussed that I live with sight loss, because I primarily wanted to be like upfront about it and share how I navigate the common barriers that I face on a daily basis. So what I had done was effectively shown them that, you know, I can navigate that, but I also come and letting them know that, you know, I'm equipped with the necessary tools and strategies to fulfill my role. And I would say the process was quite supportive overall, and my employer was very accommodating. Like I feel that because I've interviewed for various roles over the last few years, I feel that when the term vision loss is brought up in interviews, some individuals might feel a sense of discomfort. And I think that's not for a lack of wanting to, but there's a lot about vision loss that people don't know. Like there's a lot of awareness that that still is needed. And because we know that vision loss is a spectrum, like everyone functions differently, like myself to Jacqueline and yourself. So one of the strategies that I've used over the years that I feel that has been really helpful is enlisting the use of a portfolio. When we come to people and say, you know, I live with a sight loss, oftentimes that's, you know, the first thing that they hear and they see. But what I'd like to follow it up with is showcasing the previous work that I've provided, the volunteer work and community work that I've also participated in. Most times in the past, I've done this like with a binder, but there's lots of different options that you can use, like such as like a website or something, you know, it could be a video portfolio, but it really gives the employer a good sense of, you know, the experience that you have, some of the projects that you've been involved with, but also kind of showcasing how you could, you know, bring your expertise to the role as well.
What were some of the biggest challenges you have faced relating to your vision, and how did you overcome them? Wait, did I ask that one already?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I would say my biggest challenge, and I'm sure is a challenge for some of you also, is travel. I find that during the pandemic, but also through my younger years, that not being able to drive was something that made me feel very isolated from my peers. However, over the years, with improved transit and access to like rideshare like Uber, things have gotten a little bit better, but I still feel that there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done in terms of accessible transit. And it's something that I work with different municipalities with, just to kind of help them understand, you know, how it impacts people, not only people with sight loss, but anyone facing a disability. The other thing that I would say was a challenge for me up until about maybe 10 years ago was being able to ask for help and also being able to advocate for my needs. So I've had, and I don't know if it's because of the sight loss, but I've had very, very high expectations of myself over the years. And I feel like sometimes it's almost because you know, you're told when you have, you know, you're diagnosed with vision loss, a lot of people think, oh, you can't do this, or, you know, you'll never be able to do that. And that was a mentality that I never really adopted. I wanted to persevere. And because of that, I feel that I took on a lot of the challenges and the barriers on by myself, and I didn't ask for help. And, you know, over time that really can weigh on someone. And I feel that I probably could have avoided a lot of, you know, sad days because of it. But I would say that one of the biggest pieces that I've learned is that it's okay to ask for help. We are not going to be experts at everything. Sometimes we're coming to the table with 100%, other days we're going to come to the table with maybe 50 or 60. And I think it's important to recognize where we are in that term, because like we know that living with sight loss can be a little bit more cognitively like fatiguing on people. Like I know myself, using like assistive technology and accessing materials that sometimes aren't always accessible to myself, it really can weigh on a person. So my biggest advice there would be to check in with yourself and ask for help when you need it.
How, along with that, how have you built confidence in yourself over the years? What tips do you have for someone who might be struggling with their self-image?
Yeah, so the eye condition I have, nystagmus, is a visible disability. So it's normally something that if someone were meeting me for the first time, they would see. And I would say for a good portion of my life, I was self-conscious of that for a few different reasons. And I think, number one, you don't want to be different, especially growing up as a child or in college. Like the last thing you want is to stand out. I would say though, however, I kind of realized that my vision loss was more of an opportunity to raise awareness and educate people with, with other visual disabilities. And that I really did find a lot of satisfaction in helping people and empowering people with sight loss. And I've kind of made that my life's passion. My tip for anyone struggling with self-image is to embrace your uniqueness. While we are faced with different challenges throughout our life, I feel that, it does shape who we are and how we approach different things in the world. So my advice would be to focus on your strengths and remember that sometimes our differences can be sources of strength and inspiration to not only ourselves, but to others. And I would say one of the strategies that I've also used is humor, because sight loss can, like I said, it can be something that, people really don't know a lot about. And I think back to like a time where I worked as an educational assistant. And so I worked with a lot of younger kids, and I remember them coming up and asking me, and sometimes they wouldn't because maybe it's a little bit, scary for them. But I would try and make it humorous. So they'd come up and be like, "Oh, what's wrong with your eyes?" And be like, "Actually, I have very special eyes and they breakdance sometimes." And so I think, sometimes being able to make light of the conversation and, but also approach it in a way where someone is going to learn would be some advice that I would take or give rather.
I can actually totally relate because I also too have nystagmus, and that's why I tell my kids too. at work.
Yeah, right. Breakdancing. I've heard I like racing eyes. And sometimes I'd race little kids and see if they could. But yeah, so I try to make light of it.
Humor is definitely a good one to have in
Oh
our
yeah, absolutely.
Before you mentioned that you do use assistive technology.
Mhm.
What kind of things do you use?
Yeah, I use a variety of different things. At work, I use Zoom Text Fusion, which is like screen magnification and screen reading software. And that really helps me with some of like those more tedious tasks, like reading larger documents or emails, things like that. Being able to navigate Excel, which not exactly my favorite program, but it's something we have to use, right? With my phone, on my iPhone, I rely pretty heavily on the accessibility features within, like I use an Apple phone. So I will use Zoom. I've kind of set up my phone in a way that it is customized to my needs. And I would say some of the other like tools that I use would be like video magnification and the use of a monocular. I also use that on my phone. So video magnification to read like price tags, medication bottles, smaller print that's, trickier to read. And one of the items that I was introduced to younger was a monocular. So that's a little device that it's almost like, what are those things called where you bird watch? Binoculars. Okay, sorry about that. So it's almost like binoculars, but it's just a single lens, and it allows you to view things in the distance. And I use my phone a lot. There's lots of different apps out there for sight loss, like Be My Eyes and Seeing AI, and lots of little tools that I've kind of picked up over the years that I use kind of here and there.
Our last question is, how important is advocacy in your personal and professional life? How do you develop these skills?
Yeah, I would say that it's pretty vital both in my personal and professional life. And embracing advocacy really has allowed me to not only advocate for myself, but for others as well. It's empowered me to be a voice for positive change. So a lot of what I do within my role is due to my passion for the field of sight loss and being able to improve the lives of others living with sight loss. And I would say that the way in which I develop these skills are through various experiences, within my professional career, but also listening to the needs of others with sight loss and understanding the different perspectives, because what someone with total blindness might need to advocate for might not be something that a person with low vision would. Active listening, I would say active listening, empathy, and education really are the cornerstones of advocacy. And they've really helped me grow over the years. I would say like how that's related to my life is that, and I think I mentioned it just before in that when I was growing up as a student, I honestly never really wanted to accept any help. And I would say up until grade 12, the help that I had accepted was just a bit like it was the bare minimum. When I had transitioned to college, I had the same mindset at the time, but I felt like I started falling behind. I feel that, at that time, obviously I didn't have all of the tools or skills or strategies that I needed. So at that point, I really had said, you know what, maybe I need to connect with the accessibility department or accommodation department just to see what was available to me at that time. And it made a humongous difference. So I would say that don't be afraid to ask for help. And don't be afraid to ask for what you need. I know it's easy to, default to thinking that, I don't want to complain or I don't want to bring this up, but equity really is important. We deserve to access and participate and live life just as much as, a sighted person or, someone living with a disability. So I would encourage you to use your voice where you can.
Thank you for speaking with us tonight, Brogan. I'm going to pass this to Morgan or Jackie for the Q&A.
Absolutely. I'm here. Thank you so much, Brogan and Jacqueline. That was so great. And I think, Brogan, your message is so right on the nose. We need to, and that's part of what we're trying to do with Young Leaders Program, is to try to find ways to build the capacity for asking for that help and making sure that we know what our rights are and asking for accommodations and kind of not being bogged down by the perceptions of others, right?
Yeah.
So I'd love to kick it off. If anyone has any questions out there, you can ask them in a couple of ways. If you don't want to chat or turn your camera, you can type them into the meeting chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll call on you to sort of unmute your mic and turn your camera on if you wish. Is there any, hold on, I need to change my view, I think, so I can see if anyone has their hand up. Maybe I'm gonna ask a question. I guess it's hard just because I was really interesting hearing you talk about sort of the various roles you've held within CNIB Vision Loss Rehab. So my history, I worked at CNIB for many years.
Oh, cool.
Way back when it was just CNIB before the Vision Loss Rehab Canada. And I also had a couple different roles in the time I was there. And I was just wondering what sort of was the motivation for those different job changes? Was it you're changing interests, or was it just need within the organization for different things? Because one thing I really liked about that for me was that I really liked learning new things and experiencing new jobs. It kept it interesting. So I was just curious about how that worked out for you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I live with, alongside my vision loss, I also live with ADHD, and I feel that, it's kind of my superpower in a way. I really like learning. and I like mastering things and taking on new projects and things like that. I would say my motivation for the different roles that I've been in has been exactly that. Like I will have worked in a role, learn the ropes, feel like I've, been able to accomplish a lot, and that I feel like maybe it's time that I utilize my resources in other areas rather. I like challenges. I don't like to be bored. If that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense to me.
Okay.
I think I'm in a very similar wavelength.
Awesome.
I think Danica has a question. So Danica, you can ask your question.
Yes, hello. I was actually going to ask the same question as you, Morgan, but so I was thinking of another one. But yeah, I was curious to know, especially about that job change, because you never know, right? Some people just, this is what I'm comfortable with. I know it. But yeah, and then people like to bounce around and find new challenges. But what I was going to ask instead is if you can share maybe one or two highlights of your career so far.
That's a really good question. The role that I had at the CNIB Foundation, I was the program lead for children and youth programs, and that was a newer role to me, and it was a new role to the organization as well, because they had kind of started with launching different programs. I would say the highlight of my career within that role really was I got to work with so many different people, so many different community partners, but I also was able to work with those people to offer different programs for youth. And I think that, as a person with sight loss, and things that I've learned within my role is that, the general curriculum that our, students access within school doesn't encompass everything that a person with sight loss, really needs to learn. And there's, it's called like the expanded core curriculum that kind of goes through some of those like compensatory skills, like assistive technology and social advocacy and things like that. So what really, I guess, inspired me during that role was being able to work with educators and work with parents and gather, where were the needs in the community. I'd service like the Ontario West region, so fairly large region, but also being able to kind of partner with those community partners to offer programs. And so one of the highlights, sorry, that was a really long answer, but one of the highlights for me is that I was able to work with the Weather Network to bring in a group of youth to talk to meteorologists and tour the station. They actually got to be on TV and they were on the news anchor's Twitter. But anyways, it was a neat day because, number one, people felt like they belonged, like they were included. All of the staff there, we worked with them for weeks just to kind of make sure that the environment was accessible, but also that they had some tools for working with some of our youth that were coming through. And I think the highlight for me was that there was a young man after that had come up and he said, we've done he goes, I've attended a lot of programs in the past, and he said, but this was one that it really impacted him. Like it kind of sparked something in his brain that had said, this might be something that I want to go into. And prior to that, his mother had said, he wasn't thinking about post-secondary or anything like that. And so that for me, I found was very impactful, and obviously impactful for him. And then within my role as a manager right now, what I really enjoy is being able to support people. That's what drives me. So seeing people succeed, seeing people happy, healthy is a highlight for me. I'm sure there's more. I'm just blanking.
That's so fun though, for sharing that.
Yeah, anytime.
That's great. I especially think it's so nice when, I don't know, what your experience is, but working with youth, and when I worked at CNIB, I worked with youth too. So seeing people pursuing careers in STEM, is actually really, it's not as common as it should be. So promoting that to kids, I think is awesome.
I think of sorry,
No,
Morgan, but we had run a program on kids learning how to code, and it was the same thing. After after the experience, because we don't always get to experience things. He is like, you know what, I'm going to do this. And now he's in like university coding. And so it's like, it's nice to be able to follow people. We don't always get that opportunity in our careers, but yeah, it's been really cool.
Yeah, I find that too. Like, it's interesting. I know there's some people and young leaders that I used to work with in SCORE, like longer ago than I wish to admit. So it's like, you know, it's been 15 years and I see sort of the span of their lives and their careers in that time. And it's really cool to see where people go with that. Yeah. Any other questions out there? I think Jackie had a really good question.
I do. And excuse my voice, I just ate something very spicy, so I'm kind of hoarse right now. I wanted to know, have you found, Brogan, that there's any challenges to working in a career that you personally have experience with?
Another great question. I would say I think it's a great fit for me. Like, obviously I have the personal lived experience with sight loss, and it allows me to relate to people on a different level. I would say that the drawback to that is because I am a person with sight loss, I am heavily relied upon when it comes to like accessibility, being able to audit things and make sure that the tools and things that we're putting out are accessible to people. And while I use the technology, I'm not an expert in everything, right? But it also is, I mean, when we're doing those tasks, they can be quite intensive as well, because it's not just, you know, looking something over, it's normally auditing with, you know, lots of different technologies. So I would say that that's the drawback, because I really do love technology, and I think people do know that. But it's a bit of a catch-22 sometimes.
That's really interesting. You know, sorry I interrupted, but you know, I had a colleague who worked with us who has vision loss, and she eventually like moved on to a different career because she just felt like the burnout too, like of you know, seeing that experience reflected back at her every time. And like, I would say, like, I have disabilities, but I don't work in the field of my disability. Because but I really kind of relate to that comment too, because I think as soon as you disclose in the workplace that you have a disability, whatever that is, you suddenly become like the disability expert. And like people come to you for like, oh, what about this? And it's like, I don't know, like I'm not an expert in all of it. Like I'm an expert in my lived experience, but
Exactly.
That's exactly it, right? Yeah.
Vesper has a question. So Vesper, if you want to unmute yourself.
Like your name, by the way.
Hello, thank you. My question is, what like one piece of advice or motivation would you give to your like younger teenage self who, might be struggling with like having sight loss in a very sighted world?
Yeah, I would say, and this is probably easier said than done, but like I spent a lot of time in my, you know, younger years thinking and ruminating about things that people were thinking either about myself or actions that I was making. And, you know, when I look back at that, I think I was doing a great job, but I was very, very hard on myself. So I would say, if at all possible, experience life in the moment. Try not to look too far ahead. Try not to, you know, reflect on things that happened in the past, like learn from them, obviously. But don't let them become a barrier. And enjoy it. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the experience, because sometimes we can get really, you know, stressed out or caught up in things that they just kind of fly by, and then we miss out on the important stuff.
I think that's such important, like just general life advice, like not even about disability, just like I think about my younger self and it's the same thing. I think to myself, well, chill out. What were you so stressed about? Like,
well, and even like mental health, like at that age, I probably wasn't as knowledgeable on like anxiety and depression and all that stuff. And being able to like recognize early that maybe, you know what, maybe I do need a little bit of help, whether it be from like your doctor or whatever, because we had you know, talked about it at the beginning of this call, like we all went through a global pandemic, which in the eyes of a lot of people wasn't a lot, but it was a traumatic for a lot of us. Like we had to live a life that we really weren't used to at all. Didn't have any of those coping skills. So
we have a question from Jake in the chat. He says, looking back, is there anything you would have done similarly or differently, either personally or professionally? I like that question.
I just couldn't find the raise your hand.
That's
Oh.
okay. Yeah, I don't think I would change anything. I thought about it a lot in the past, you know, thinking about whether or not I wanted to go to university, but I think I experienced everything for a reason. There are a lot of ups and downs and challenges and a lot of learnings, but ultimately it really has helped me with who I am today. Try not to regret too much.
I have another question if anybody else if nobody else wants to jump in. Who would you say is one or two people who motivated you or that you would highlight in your career so far that you would say really helped you and why?
Yeah, so I would say my parents were huge motivators to me. Like, they knew that I had sight loss, and it was something that scared them, obviously, when I was born, because we're not normally prepared for that unless we have another child with sight loss. So really they motivated me to, there was no barriers for me. Like, whatever I wanted to do, they worked with schools and partners to make sure that it was accessible. So I'd say my parents for sure, and they always pushed me to, do the things that I loved, and I'm grateful that they did, because anxiety might have prevented me otherwise. And I think what was really important for me growing up was having a mentor. So it's really like, I'm grateful that your mentorship program exists. It's not something that we had when I was a bit younger, but I can see, really great value in that, and being able to navigate challenges with university, college, work, whatever that might be. So yeah, I've had a couple mentors within my career that really have kind of pushed me to be where I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, and again, this is like a selfish question. Just when you mentioned mentorship, I want to know more. How important to you is it now that you're able to mentor someone else? Like, what has that process been like, an experience for you so far?
It's been fantastic. Because I have worked as a vision rehab therapist, my role in the past was being able to kind of empower people to achieve their goals and, work on skills that they're interested in learning and things like that. So yeah, it's been honestly a really great experience with my mentor, mentee rather. I learn a lot from her, and she brings a lot of great perspectives. But I think what I like most about it is that it's something that I get to enjoy outside of work. So, I have my work stuff and I come home, but this is something like I'm genuinely passionate, and I get to see, the benefit of it, that Alicia, and I kind of talk about. So that's important to me, to be involved with the community, because, there is knowledge and being connected to power and being connected to your community.
What do you do for fun outside of work that makes for a nice balance? Or if you do anything outside of, like, do you have any hobbies that kind of balance out your career?
Yeah, I'm a big hobby hopper. So I take on a lot of DIY projects and crafts, and I learn different hobbies. And so I got an office full of craft stuff here that I really enjoy. I go biking with my daughter, so her and I will bike around, and we really enjoy that. And I have a dog that keeps me very busy, but honestly really keeps me motivated, because I love going on my little adventures with her. So I try and be outside as much as I can. Winter isn't my season.
Winter isn't my season either, but I swear that with the way that the summer has gone in Southern Ontario, that winter is going to have to become my season, compared with the air quality and the humidity and the storms. I'm like, yeah, winter doesn't seem that bad anymore.
A lot, eh?
It's a lot. And I didn't know you have a daughter, so that's very sweet.
Oh, thanks.
My daughter's sitting beside me right now eating pizza and watching Sesame Street. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yes. Do we have any more questions from anyone?
Oh, well, now I'm going to jump in again, because I'm curious. Sorry, I know I told Jackie, hey, I'm done. I'll stop asking, but I lied. I'm not going to. I'm curious now, because I didn't know you had a daughter either. How do you find like managing parenting and work? Because obviously that's something that Jackie and I talk about a lot. We both struggle with having Jackie's little one is 2 and mine is 7. And I think there's just different sort of expectations on young women who have kids in the workforce. Like, how do you balance all that?
By being very honest. I think like in the past, I didn't have really good balance in that, you know, if things that come up with kids and work, I just tried to manage it all at once, and that long term doesn't work ever, I find. So it's being honest with myself in that if I wake up one morning and I have, you know, a meeting to host and I'm not going to be there physically or mentally, then it's just being able to say that. But it's challenging raising kids. It's messy all the time, and things that I thought were in one place are not in another place. So yeah, it's challenging, but I learn every day. And like our daughter, like she has special needs, like she has ADHD and some behavioral stuff. So I feel like we had to take on a lot that we really didn't know a lot about, and so that spurred us to seek like professional help. Like we've worked with OTs and PTs and pediatricians and things like that, because it is a lot, right? So sometimes we need help. Did that answer everything? I hope I did.
That was great.
I mean, I think you and I could probably just have a conversation all evening. But
Probably, yeah.
I will stop asking questions now and see if there's any.
We have a question. We have another question from Jacqueline.
Perfect.
I will read it out. Oh, and now Jake also. So I'll do Jacqueline's question first. Are there careers or industries that seem more welcoming to people with vision loss or open to making accommodations?
I can speak to like experiences that I have had. And so obviously I feel that who I work for is very inclusive of individuals with sight loss. And outside of like specialist roles, there are other roles, and the CNIB also does hire for like they have different positions that they will post as well. So they're really good. And I'll plug a program that they have called Come to Work, where they will work on providing people with skills and boot camps and things to prepare you for employment. And one of the unique things is that they have partnerships with some of like Fortune 500 companies across the country, where they can connect you for like internships and things like that. Sorry, can you repeat the question? I'm forgetting it already.
I have to look in the chat.
Oh,
again.
accommodations. Okay, yeah. So
yes.
I feel that the other field that has been pretty inclusive is the field of ally. So being able to be involved in like accessibility, inclusion, design, the AODA, WCAG, or like WCAG, all that stuff. I find that that has, you know, grown over the last few years, especially with, you know, mandates from AODA. So if that's something that's of interest to you, I know some information that I got from Accessibility Canada, like they're a really great resource. So, but that, I mean, there's probably more. Those are just kind of two thoughts I have.
Jake, do you still have a question? I saw
Oh,
you
yes,
put your
yes,
hand
I
up.
just alerted the hand. Brogan, is there any advice you can give to someone with vision loss who is just starting their career?
I would say take it day by day. Try not to think too in the future. Things probably will change every day of your career, and you know how you approach it will be a bit different as you learn and grow as well. I would say if you feel like it's really not working, have an honest, open conversation with your boss. If you feel like you're struggling or you need accommodations, I know it's easy to kind of fall back into that mindset that, you know, I'm just going to let it go. It'll be fine. But, you know, I find that it's kind of better to tackle those things head on as opposed to let them, you know, drag on. So, and have fun. Choose something that you like, that you love, and that's something that's going to, you know, motivate you every day when you wake up, and, you know, drive that passion in you.